Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Oh, nope. Hold on.
The sound.
Hi. Nope, that's still not working.
Audio,
Oh,
audio,
no, it is
audio,
working. It is
audio,
working.
audio.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. Hi, everybody. Sorry. No. Sorry. Let's try that again. Hi, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Ramblemancy.
First try.
I actually did switch it to the break screen. Anyway, hello. We are here tonight. Nailed it. Thank you, Chance. I appreciate that.
I'm not going to edit that out. I'm keeping that in. That's good. That's perfect.
Good. As you should.
That was
Yep. Deserves to be in.
We are very polished and professional, so obviously we had to do a second take of that. We'll take it out in post. Well,
Hi, Leah.
Hi, Leah. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Yep. I got distracted by my own bit that I so distracted that I don't know what we're doing. Welcome to Ramblemancy, the show where we talk about things and also stuff. That's the tagline. Welcome. It's so good to have y'all here once again on this fine Friday night. Today we are good, Chans. I'm so glad that you like things and stuff because we have so much in common. So yeah, we don't have a specific topic for tonight. It's just another free range ramble. And as per tradition, with the free range ramble, John, what do you got for us?
I was prepared this time. I was ready. It's just an in-house ramble tonight. A cozy little a rule of lore staff chit chat on this Friday evening. We're glad to have you all along with us. This is a thing that I kind of have been thinking about this week. And it's something that I think is sort of like it's important for everyone, I think, but especially content creators who live a lot of their lives online, and it's kind of broached in conversations in different ways with folks this week. But I think my question that I'm leading to it here is we live in a very online world. Information is everywhere, and it is frankly an assault of information on the senses at all times when you're online. So how do you feed yourself? And I mean not like food. It could be food.
Badly. Oh wait, we're not talking about food?
Not necessarily food, but like how do you feed yourself? How do you take care of yourself? What are things you do to separate yourself from like being online, that constant stream of like information, being updated on things, especially like when your hobbies are digital, things like video games and stuff like that can be very easy to stay plugged in all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good question to start with, is just like, there's a lot going on. How do we all take care of ourselves?
Leah says sleep, which I think is a great place to start, honestly.
Yeah. Sleep is one of those things that's terribly easy to cut out of your sleep schedule. You're like, I'll just play Hollow Knight for another hour, and you shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that.
Honestly, I feel like my answer is a little bit it's kind of cheating a little bit but honestly, I haven't found myself as online lately, and it is mainly ever since Cole moved in, because basically Cole being here gives me something, literally anything else to do. So we just mostly been doing a lot more like getting outside, that kind of stuff, just sort of like walking and
literally touching grass.
Literally touching grass, yes, exactly.
Except if you're Freeman, don't touch grass.
Except if you're Freeman, yes, he's definitely.
Yeah, I can touch grass. Okay, I just can't roll around in it half naked anymore. All right.
It's okay. My brother cannot do that either. He is also
I would guess that a lot of people might not be able to, just because your skin is a large organism and it's very sensitive.
Absolutely.
Not everyone's, but
no, I think I really do think it's just finding, like for me, and I imagine a lot of people with ADHD have this problem of ending up online by default because we got to keep our brains moving. Um, or we've got to find stuff to feed our brains.
Exactly.
But like honestly, it really is just finding another thing to like occupy that time. And like Amity said, reading has been a thing that I have been doing a lot more of lately. Um, and that has been hugely helpful because I've found recently that like in those weird like in between things when I'm like I don't want to play video games, I'm not like actively working on a project and I'm not like working or whatever. Those are the places where like social media and online tends to like creep into the cracks. And lately I've
Yep.
found that like having a book fills that space rather nicely. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the woods is where I
Mm.
often go for a
Yeah.
little bit of quietude. I a couple of years ago I started. We're 2 years. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I started kind of going to this spot with binoculars that I got for my birthday, and I started doing some just like bird watching and duck watching, and most recently now there's a turtle that has come up every once in a while, which I'm fairly certain that thing is nearly as old as I am, and yeah, I think it's at least 30 years old.
Damn.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
a if it is the turtle I think it is, then they live like anywhere between 25 and 30 years. So it could,
Wow.
yeah, that's kind of, yeah.
I
Um,
sorry, Freeman, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just saw like
no,
there's
no,
a whole lot of you in here tonight, and I very much appreciate that.
Yeah.
I saw Dean. It's been a long time, Dean. Hello, good to
Been a
it's
see
been a
you, man.
while.
while.
Um,
Hmm.
Vertiman, hello, welcome. Newly Human, thanks for being here. Obviously saw Geek Outs already. Amity, hello. Chan's, of course, is here. Leah, oh my gosh. Cam, have a good lurk. I hope you have a good evening. Man, there's just a whole bunch of you here today.
Chat
Um,
is popping tonight.
it is.
Um,
It's so good to see
Beautiful.
all of you.
yeah, Chan said, I don't know about Freeman, but it's wild how one day I just started bird watching. I didn't go out of my way to do it. It's now just part of my day today. It seems like something
Hmm.
that would be very easy to just start doing because like you can go, oh, that's a cool bird. What kind of bird is that?
And then that just,
And
and
then
that's goes from there. Yeah.
The
all
one
of a
thing
sudden you know a lot of things about birds.
there's only one thing that I like. I don't know a lot about birds, but I will say that there was a day, and this is I will brag about this because it was the only time that I was able to do so. But there was a day where Freeman and I
Uh,
were walking on the beach, and I successfully identified a bird that Freeman did not identify, and it was great. It was a kingfisher. So yeah, I was very proud of myself for that. Dean, I did get RPG stories. It keeps crashing on me. I don't know what if maybe I'm doing something wrong or whatever, but it does keep crashing on me. So I haven't had a whole lot of time to like put into it, but I think my computer just kind of hates it, unfortunately. So we'll have to test it out on somebody else's computer. But yeah, um, yeah, Dean
Have
was
this
kind
hello,
enough to
hello.
Dean was kind enough to gift Rule of Lore a copy of RPG Stories, which I've been trying to play around with. But like I said, it keeps crashing on my
Ooh.
computer. But yeah, it seems very cool thus far, and I hope that maybe it was like some like buggy thing on their side, and maybe some of the recent updates have fixed it, and I'm gonna test it out. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah, thanks, Dean. Yeah, I think I sent a bug report, but I don't remember. It was a while ago, but yeah. Um,
Yeah, no, I'm gonna catch up on chat real quick. Like there were a bunch
yeah,
of folks
yeah.
chatting up there too. Jen said, "I feel like it's cheating to be ready like this," and I felt like I was cheating too, but I just kind of naturally like the way that this question formed in my mind is while I was, and this is part of my answer. Watch me ADHD my way back to the beginning of this anecdote. My answer to this question is that like much like what Chan said, I find new hobbies that purposely keep me away from the internet and PC, like making rugs or dice or listening to an audiobook. It's still tech, but it's not really online and on a screen. And like my kind of recent thing, if you've seen my Twitter feed, is that I started learning to climb, and that's nice because it's like exercise. Getting your body moving is always
Yeah.
good. When the weather's nice out here in the Arctic, I mean Minnesota, I also like to walk. But since it's not, I've been going to the climbing gym, and I was climbing with a friend today, and I mentioned that like I had heard like distantly of some kind of like weird social media beef between like Dimension 20 fans and Critical Role fans or something like that over the new season. And like the only thing that I've seen of it is people saying that it's happening. I've not actually seen any
Right.
of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And both of us just shrugged and were like, I don't know, I only go on Twitter enough to like do work, to like, check the people that I like, the
Hmm.
my colleagues that I follow, and to do my own like
Yeah.
promo and marketing. And then I get off Twitter again. And like having that exchange sitting at the gym, which is a hobby that like I share with a few friends to keep myself offline, just kind of like popped this question into my head. And I was just like, oh, this feels like exactly the reason why I am here in this building right now, trying to figure out how to plaster myself against this wall to plaster myself slightly higher this time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. No, it's true. Like I really do think that that there's a lot of stuff that I see, and I mostly like some of the most like like controversial things and like the just dumb Twitter beefs and whatnot. I just see people discussing them, and
Hmm.
sometimes I feel like that's worse because a bunch of people who like are not part of a thing making themselves a part of something that they have no business being a part of, and it's just I don't like sometimes I feel like that's worse. I
Gives
find
it
that I
more
have
attention to.
yeah, I also find that I have a lot like a super low tolerance these days for social media, um which is, maybe the most like 30 and above thing I've ever said, but like I have a low tolerance for it these days because I don't know, I think maybe I just like over the last few years filled up like I feel like I filled up a meter, right? Like I filled up a meter of like outrage and
mhm.
now it doesn't go down below a certain point anymore, so now I only have a short amount of time and I just see outrage and I start feeling that and I'm gone and like
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Chan says a lot of the controversies in online drama I've learned about against my will because of that chronically online mentality,
Yeah.
which is a huge reason why the last couple of years has been me finding ways to get away from the internet. And yeah,
Yeah.
like I agree, Lucas. Like it's so easy for social media to suck you in and like show you things that will like outrage you, but in a way that makes you want to like learn more or read more, and like you get stuck in this cycle of either like seeking validation or like feeling outraged and fueling that outrage.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, like it is I'm glad to hear that like there are at least people in this space that are like, yeah, we should like step back from that. It's not
Hmm.
good for us.
Yeah. I like what Dean said. Dean said I write and that keeps me off the internet as well as running games at the store. And that's very cool. I actually did just start writing again today. I was sort of inspired by like an old teacher reaching out, or not teacher, a colleague reaching out to me about a um like a fundraiser that he's doing for like a for an art kind of like an art co-op kind of thing that was in our college town, and it kind of like talking to him sort of made me like look back over some of my old writings and things like that that I did for some of their events, and then it kind of got me started writing again. So like I feel you, Dean. Like it actually today specifically I was writing earlier today, and like it got me like it very much filled the time that I would have probably otherwise filled with social media. So it's a very
Hmm.
effective way of doing things, but yeah.
Hmm.
um but
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the ways that I used to do it, it's like speaking of writing, one of the ways that I used to do that is I would take my note, like I still carry notebooks with me everywhere because a lot of the times I'll have game design ideas and I want to write them down,
Mm-hmm.
which is just a different version of this. But like it just I would take my notebook with me or a couple of notebooks, and I would do like little writing exercises when I was somewhere and I had time to kill instead of opening my phone and picking up Twitter and scrolling it or scrolling
Yeah.
Reddit or Tumblr or whatever. I would get out my notebook and instead I would just start making observations. Like, you know, whatever jumped out at me, like interesting sounds, interesting sights,
Yeah.
smells, like little snippets of conversation that I heard that my brain just like latched onto, or like a funny action that somebody was taking, like just a
That's
people
awesome.
watch, basically, like
Yeah.
collect,
Mhm.
add to my
Cool.
little writerly magpie horde of experiences that I could,
Yeah.
you know, pitch into some
It's
random
a
thing that I write.
good way to practice situational awareness too,
Yeah.
actually.
I think
I
really a
Kind of
lot of
accidental mindfulness training,
that's
really, is what it is.
exactly the word that I was about to use was mindfulness. I was like,
Yeah.
honestly, our brains today, John, are just like in the same place. This is like what, the third time since we got on the call.
Uh-huh.
it's
Uh,
it's been magnificent to watch, by the way.
Mhm.
but yeah, mindfulness is exactly the word I was gonna say, and I find that like I don't know what it is, but like something in the just like I think something just kind of snapped for me, in like the last 6 to 8 months, where all of a sudden I just like I was online. I was very online, mostly out of habit, um, and like was saying to myself like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this for like rule of law stuff, for work things and like whatever." And then when I was across the country for a while and like offline by necessity, then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, there's a world out here," and I suddenly find
Oh.
myself not wanting to leave it. And genuinely, a lot of it is like that sort of mindfulness thing, or like what Chan said in the chat just now, which is I find myself lately treating the internet like those memes of opening a fridge and closing it only to reopen it again a few minutes later when I know literally nothing has changed. The moment I notice that, it's a sign to get up and do literally anything else. And absolutely, I find myself doing
Mm.
very much the same thing. So like, where I'll look and just be like, it'll either be like I don't care about any of the things that I'm seeing right now, and don't care to know about them, or it's like that outrage meter that just sort of like goes up and like I don't have the energy for this, and then I just leave. Like I said, I find my threshold for that is much lower these days.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's good. I think that's healthy, right? It's not good for people to be outraged all of the time, and we have a very human need, I think, for variety and change. Like we like habit and not expending energy, but we also need stimulation in
Yeah.
ways that isn't just like moving our thumbs and making some like little electrons fire in our brains when we see
Yeah.
things on a screen, right?
Hmm. And I think it really is just like I'm experiencing the exact same thing that I think I have become a microcosm of the conditions that led to the like board game and tabletop game renaissance, where people were
Hmm.
very online, very excited about like MMORPGs and online shooters and all these sorts of things, and then all of a sudden realized like, oh, social gaming doesn't really replace being physically at the table with people. And then that's kind of like
Yeah.
the conditions that led to the board game renaissance, and
Mhm.
therefore then the TTRPG renaissance after that. And like I feel like currently I am just sort of a microcosm of those same events taking place right now in real time.
Yeah, like I have never out of necessity from the pandemic, I wound up playing a lot of games online with friends, and now again more than ever, I find myself really drawn to just wanting to carry a couple of like simple RPG books
Yeah.
in my backpack, so that like if I arrive at a situation with a couple of friends, I can just be like, "You want to play some Sleepaway?"
Yeah. No, genuinely for me, I think that my answer to this question, I think, is very specifically like reading, and much more recently, writing. Like getting back to
Mhm.
those things, I think, has gotten me. It's not that those are the things that have prevented me from going online, or made me stop going. It's just that those are what has filled the time now that would otherwise have gone to social media scrolling.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
and
it's
doom
it's
scrolling.
definitely it's definitely been climbing for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, or at least at the very least, like walking and exercising.
Yeah.
Like when I find myself kind of like butting my head against like work, just like slogging through something, or like when I find myself in that place where I'm like, I don't want to play video games and I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, and I'll just be like, I'm gonna go take a walk.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other part of it really also has been, um, kind of as I have gotten more comfortable leaving the house, um, is just like reconnecting with people that I sort of lost touch with, um, during the height of the pandemic, you know, and just
Mhm.
really just like finding time to reconnect with people has been really helpful, a lot as well, because it's like
Yeah,
it's just it's one thing interacting with people online, but then like interacting with them in person that has been very much a sort of I wouldn't go so far as to call it a healing process, but it definitely has been something to like you interact with people differently online, and it
Yeah.
is after doing that exclusively for years, um coming back to like interacting with people in person, it's sort of like I don't know, it's nourishing. Yeah, it's like you say, John, like you feed yourself, you know.
yeah, it's invigorating, I think, in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. Like I still have to be like we there's all still like a level of care that we need to
Mm-hmm.
take, and especially folks like me who are on immunosuppressants, and so that's
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
an added layer of complication with the global panini. But
Yeah.
like the kind of managing managing the risks that you take with the need, I think, to feed yourself
Yeah.
is
Absolutely.
is it like
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's something that I feel like we're all kind of like learning to do now again at the as we're like getting farther and farther in here, and we at least have like measures that we understand and can take
Yeah.
to mitigate those
Mhm.
factors, right? Between like making sure that you stay up to date on like vaccines and like choosing carefully the kind of activities and masking and all of that stuff. Like,
Yeah. 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 For sure. Which reminds me, I need to get my booster. Anyway, that's
reminder
the
to
thing I
everybody in
gotta do.
chat as well to stay up to date on your booster shots and get your bivalent series.
Yep. That's the one I need to get. Which the only reason it's taken me this long is because they recommend like after you get COVID to wait like I think it was like 6 months or so until you get like the thing, and we have just now passed 6 months,
Yeah.
so like it's
Yeah.
time, baby. So yeah,
Yeah, no, 100%. And I saw a couple people say I should get back into writing, to which I say do it. Um, and like one of the evergreen piece of creative advice is that like good enough is not a pejorative term.
mm-hmm.
Um, it's like
Yeah,
set goals for yourself and just do the thing.
mm-hmm.
Write what feels comfortable to you. If that's just like stream of consciousness, if it's writing fanfic, if it's doing little exercises like I mentioned earlier, like
Mhm.
writing down everything that you see, hear, smell, touch, whatever, you
Yeah,
know, whatever
Yeah.
is fun and feels like a good diversion for you, or feels good and nourishing to you.
I
yeah,
absolutely
exactly.
do that too. I take a journal, or not really a journal, a field notebook. Oh, here you are. Where are you? Here you are. A little Write in the Rain
Nice.
notepad. I love these things.
Nice.
Little pocket journal. And I do that. I'll write down the date because that's very important for me. I know what day I saw a thing, so I'll copy down like what bird I saw or duck, and then oh helicopter,
Is
and
that what that is? Okay.
yeah, I'm writing it down right now so I don't forget. Um, April 21st, 2023. Helicopter
Helicopter
flew
during
over.
Ramblemancy.
It
Yeah.
is 18:32 p.m. Yeah, so I'll write down things that I see, and it's a good exercise for sure. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel you, Amity. Getting back into the habit of physically writing, that's the problem, I think. In school, I had notebooks with me
Mm.
constantly, so I was always writing and drawing. I don't do that anymore, but I do always have a book with me. And that's good. That's honestly, having a book with you is a great place. That's how I started again, honestly. That's what got me there. And also having an idea is the other thing that got me sort of something that I was really excited about. But like, um, but yeah, having a book is a great start to get back into writing. Like reading is like, I know it's like the most common advice for like writers. It's like read a lot. But I mean I'm saying this more in the context of like starting to write again. That's what kind of got me there again too, because like I've never felt more further away from my ability to write than when I was not reading. So like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a great place to start, you know.
Yeah, and like that's an excellent point. I think is that like consuming. And I don't want to. I want to rephrase that. Enjoying the kind of media that you want to create is a great way to get yourself excited about making it.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. It absolutely is. Um
Oh, and it's a cool cycle too, because like you read something, it gets you excited about writing, you write, and then like you take like pieces of inspiration or like this particular technique that you thought that you saw somebody use that you like that you want to apply to your own practice, and then you do that, and then like that builds an awareness of that technique or those structures or those ideas, and so then when you go on and you read more stuff or you watch things or you see more art, then like you gain an appreciation for it in a new way. Like it helps. I
Mhm.
don't know, it's a cool way that like as you practice an art you begin to see the world in a different way and you begin to see other people's practices in a different way.
yeah. Yeah. It's very true. And yeah, that's yeah. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. That's just yeah, but no, I think just finding things for me, just sort of finding things in the analog world that I think
Mhm.
uh has been what has helped sort of, that I've found the most nourishing recently, reading,
Mhm.
now writing. Um, God, there was another thing that I was thinking about just now that it's not in my brain anymore, but there's a third thing
Mhm.
that like was sort of big thing that was like, but yeah. And that's I like I've even actually, it's funny that you asked this question today because it was just like last night that I was thinking about this, going like, wow, I just feel very like sat like I was reading and I was like, I feel very satisfied. Like this is doing, I feel like this is having an effect on my brain, and I like it. It's a good effect. This
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
feeding me in a
Hmm.
way that just sort of being on this in front of the screen forever just doesn't. Like, don't get me wrong, I love
Yeah.
video games, but it doesn't like,
Mhm.
video games are like video games are like the bacon part of your meal, right?
I like
like
that.
like reading, writing, doing other stuff in the analog world is like, is like the Brussels sprouts. They're not great all the time, but you know what? They can, if you do it right, they're great. They're good, and they're good for you.
Mhm.
So
Exactly. I love this analogy
especially,
so much.
especially if
This
you
is
roast
good.
them in a little bit of bacon fat, like
exactly,
that makes
exactly.
Brussels sprouts really good. Don't steam them for the love of God. um
Well, 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 well. If you want to,
I
no
mean,
just have a
judging.
just have a
yeah,
lot of air freshener ready. um
yeah. Do
That's
Brussels
okay. That's
sprouts in
true.
particular. If you're gonna
yeah.
steam Brussels sprouts, have an air freshener ready, or over
Literally,
the.
like, steamed Brussels sprouts literally smell like hot garbage. That's not, and
Yeah.
that's not a joke. I mean that literally. Like, they smell like very warm garbage.
Mhm.
Yeah. Steamed cauliflower is not that
It really
much
isn't.
better,
Yeah.
honestly.
Mhm.
Yeah, we got a lot of cauliflower a couple summers ago, and that's what I did. I steamed it because I was
Yeah.
like, I like grilled it sometimes, but I mostly just steamed it so I could either rice it or just eat it like the florets
Right.
like they
Yeah.
were. And the smell is it's still there, still with me.
I've
I will
also
never
steamed
forget.
cauliflower in my life before, and you describing this to me has awakened visceral memories.
um.
Oh.
Ooh.
New Human said, John, it hit me when you phrased away from consuming. I think I'm trying to step away from just consumption with art and trying to get deeper with engaging. And
Yeah.
yeah, like I think this is a little bit kind of the theme of the conversation that we've been having here. And I caught myself because I'm trying to be better about that. we live in a society. We live in a society that definitely is geared towards consumption, towards just like shoveling like handfuls of the media equivalent of like chips into your face, like more and more and more and more. Like there's so much, you're inundated with things, and you're encouraged
Yeah.
to like buy this, subscribe to this, and it's a practice that's designed to get you to like expose yourself to lots of things rapidly, so you're more likely to like buy things. That's good for corporations and businesses and stuff, but um it kind of it shifts you away from like the more kind of the point of a lot of art, which is the experience of it, or the experience of doing it or making it. And that requires, as we've been talking about, a certain amount of presence, and not just like kind of passive consumption of art, but like active appreciation of it, and being involved with it, and being involved with like the people who make it, or yourself, the people around you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's for me what it is about reading, is that reading, like, having your whole like like engaging with like any kind of story or narrative or whatever in written form kind of forces you to take your time and sort of like just sort of chew over everything that you're reading, basically, as opposed to watching it, where I sometimes, I don't know if anybody else feels this, but like I sometimes, maybe it's an ADHD thing, or maybe like media has changed in some capacity, maybe it's both, but like I feel like sometimes I'll be watching something and I don't like the show itself, or the movie or whatever, doesn't give me the time I need to like take in what I just saw, like where it's like the pacing of it doesn't let it
Mm.
breathe, doesn't allow me to. And so there's not really a whole lot of chewing over what I've just seen, or that is happening in that moment. Like if I want to do that, I have to watch it again, you know. Um, but yeah, like I don't know. I just feel like I feel like when I've gotten so used to like consuming media, like narrative and media through like um, TV shows and movies and whatever, that like when I went back to reading the books, I felt more like I was having time to think about what I was getting in terms of
Mm.
stories and narrative, and it just felt, yeah, it just, I think that's where that kind of nourishment feels like, and like so, like mass modern mass media is like packaged and processed and like thrown at you, and you're supposed to like chew it up, spit it out, move on, and then like yeah.
It's just having this conversation, like I feel like every conversation I've had about creating recently always just brings me, it's probably because the game is very much in my mind, because I'm in the process of like finishing it and fulfilling it, but like it brings me back to the most recent game I wrote, Terminus, where I'm just like, this
Mm.
game is all about like literally slowing down the way that
Mm-hmm.
you play and engage with things. It's like, all right, buddy, you want to play this over your lunch break? You can do that. Like, but set aside an hour.
Yeah.
But and it's got like, you want to play for an hour, you want to play for this much, but it has like distinct steps to it. Like it, you have to take this someplace with you and be there and walk around it and get your hands in the dirt and smell the flowers and watch watch the animals or the people in your place doing things,
Mm-hmm.
and then come back, sit down, and think about all of that.
Yeah.
And it
Mhm.
just, to me, I think that that game very much was written in some ways as a response to a need for myself to get back to doing those sorts of things, to like needing to be present in my life again.
Yeah, I like what Leah just said, was very much getting back into weekly episode and trying to actually break up my consumption of media. And I think that's so interesting because I actually hadn't thought about it that way, but I actually put that way, that's a very good argument for, like, a very good argument in favor of like weekly episodes rather than releasing a season and then binging, even on streaming sites.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, as frustrating as it is, because you just want to know what comes next,
Mm-hmm.
there is a sort of like, it gives you time to like sort of sit and digest, and I think that's That's very interesting, Leah. I'm glad you said that because like yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about it that way before, but I sort of think you're right, and you may have just in this moment turned me completely around on the whole like moving back to weekly episodes on streaming sites. Huh.
Yeah. I
You
think
may
like
have
one
just
of
converted me, Leah.
I think my like I'm not wholly against it, and I think my favorite versions of that are the ones where they over the course of like a month or like 6 weeks drop like 2 episodes a week or like 3 episodes a
Yeah,
week.
yeah, in like little
Like,
chunks is cool. I like that.
Mhm.
Like we
mm-hmm.
talked about this recently when we were talking about Legend of Vox Machina, where they drop like 3 episodes at a time.
Yeah, because those episodes were like 20, 25
Yeah,
minutes,
20. Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I think with a
Mhm.
show
Pretty
that
short.
short, with a runtime that short, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it makes more
Mhm.
sense than like a 45-minute runtime. It makes more sense with those because that is one reason there's a lot of shows I just sort of like I mentioned once recently Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Like I never actually watched the last season because I I don't know. It just feels weird to watch a half an hour, like 25-minute long show, and then wait a week to watch the next 25 minutes. It just seems. So I just like didn't watch it as it was coming out, and then just didn't watch it. Period. So like I don't know.
That's always why I'm really sad when we get like 35-minute episodes of The Mandalorian, and then
Yeah.
we go to the next
Mm.
week, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh man, like
Yeah. Come
you
on.
could have given me 10 more minutes of Din Djarin and Grogu being cool and like being cute and doing cool shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. So on the subject of the Mandalorian though, really fast. The other day I said something just sort of at like Cole because Cole and I are watching through it the whole thing,
Mhm.
and I said it just sort of very offhandedly. But then I realized I was very correct, and I was like, ah, and here we see Din Djarin in his natural habitat, getting the shit kicked out of him, and like, it's very true though. Like that man is never not getting his ass handed to him,
True.
but somehow
I know
still
it.
looking like a badass doing it. I don't know. It's incredible.
Yep.
Yeah, no, like Din Djarin somehow manages to simultaneously get his ass beat all of the time, come out on top, and look cool doing it.
Yeah.
And I like a little bit the Mandalorian mood, I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
because
Absolutely.
there are so few of them and so many people who want them dead. And so the odds are just always stacked against them. Like in theory, one versus one, a Mandalorian versus a Stormtrooper. Stormtrooper loses 10 times out of 10, but Mandalorian versus like 15 Stormtroopers, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Just some of them are going to hit something vital.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't know. It's just I think this is very like this is really interesting though. Like this concept of like how we engage with like media and narrative and the different ways that like
Yeah.
allow us to digest it better. Cause yeah.
Well, like both we're talking about The Last of Us in chat right now, and Lucas, you were talking about feeling you have more time to process things when you read, and I think those things. This is a good I think point to synthesize here, which is that like when you're reading, like you are limited by the rate at which you can read and comprehend what you're
And you're
reading,
also
right?
fully in control of stopping so that you can just sort of
Mhm.
like put it down and go, okay, let me just process what I just said. Let me pick it up and go back and read that over again. And yeah.
Hmm. And like you have that kind of control, and that gives you time to like weigh it and like analyze it and think through it and like feel whatever you're feeling about what you're reading. And I think that's I'm very glad that The Last of Us chose to do what it did.
Yeah.
As Jens was saying, oh dang, I never really thought about that, but yeah, that's a really solid point. I feel like I don't discuss shows with friends as much as I used to, which I deeply miss because of the binging phenomenon with The Last of Us. I was chatting with friends and comparing feelings and such, and like weekly episodes do kind of make that easier, right? Because everybody it has the opportunity to watch at kind of the same pace. People watch it over, between usually in like a few days after it comes out. But also, especially with a show like The Last of Us that is heavy, there's a lot going on in that show. Um, and you need time to process that. I cannot imagine sitting down and watching like 2 or 3 episodes of The Last of Us back to back. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like I used to think
I
the same
try.
thing. I used to think the same thing about like look at a show like Star Trek: The Next Generation, right? Where like that was a show that was made to be serialized weekly kind of thing, right? And it was in a time before like binging would happen, and so I always assumed that the reason that those that I had a hard time when I was doing my like watch through of it, the reason I was having a hard time with it, I always assumed it was because it wasn't made for that. And that might be part of it. It wasn't made to be viewed that way, I should say. And that might be part of it. But I think the other part of it is what you just said, John, which is that like a lot of those episodes are very they're not heavy necessarily, but they are very substantive. They're very dense.
Hmm.
Um
Hmm.
and you can't it's sort of a certain amount of mental exhaustion if that sets in if you try to just watch several of them back to back because it doesn't give you time to digest the episode. You know, that coupled
Yeah.
with the structure of like self-contained arcs, I think makes it hard to binge something like that. But I never thought I always assumed it was just the structure, but I think it might also be the content too. The content of the
Yeah.
episodes that makes it hard to watch a lot of them like because you got to sit and digest a lot of them, you know.
You can like shovel like I'm you can shovel like a porterhouse steak into your face at light speed,
But
but I
God,
wouldn't
it's
recommend it.
yeah, no, it's
It's
your body's gonna be like, why,
but you're gonna have a stomach. You're not gonna enjoy the
yeah,
experience. Like at best, you're gonna walk away like really not having enjoyed much of the meal that you just ate, or had the opportunity to. And then at worst, you're gonna have one hell of a stomach ache.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so like yeah, as it, like Nearly Human also said, like I'm maybe biased because I literally work in TV. I hate the idea of people just rushing through binge style and not even really seeing and absorbing the work I put into it. But
Yeah,
like you said, Lucas, like substantive media like that requires time to process it. A lot of times when I watch stuff, even if I'm watching like a show on Dropout that's like 20 minutes of comedy, sometimes like I will find myself chuckling at it the next day,
yeah,
right? The next morning I'm getting up and getting ready and going about my day, getting ready for like to do work and stuff, and I'll just like find myself thinking about whatever bullshit secrets got spilled on dirty laundry last night and chuckle to myself about. I don't like they're always super horny. Um,
yeah,
but something like that, or a lot of times even days later when it comes to shows like The Last of Us or Andor, I'll find myself thinking about them.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just think about. Sometimes I just go back and rewatch One Way Out from Andor, um, and sometimes I just think about a lot of pieces from that episode because
Yeah, yeah. No, it's true though. Like there's a certain amount of that like if you're just immediately going on to the next one, there's just a lot of it that you're not picking up. I feel like so much of it like we make jokes about the like the refrigerator test, you know, where
Mhm.
we joke about like you go to a movie, you see it, and you come home and you're like, oh, that was pretty good, I liked it, and then you come home and you know late at night when you're at your refrigerator and you look inside and you're going, wait a minute, that didn't make any goddamn sense. That movie passed the refrigerator test. We make jokes about that, but like it's I think the reason that is a thing is because you are still processing long after the fact. I know I am.
Mhm.
That's a thing that happens to me all the time. In fact, sometimes like this is why it bugs me when I see this kind. There's a kind of just conversation around a lot of the shows that we've been mentioning that really bugs me. It's the kind of show where people,
Filler.
well, that, but not more. I think more generally the discussion where people are like, "Oh, this is bad writing," and I'm like, "Stop, okay." I'm guessing that because seeing as how this show aired literally last night and you're saying it was bad writing, you watched it the one time. But me, like as somebody who has both like formally and informally studied writing of this kind, even I don't know sometimes whether something that I saw is good writing or bad writing until way, way after, and I've thought about it for a really long time,
Hmm.
or hell, even watched it a second or third time. I don't even know if it was good writing until later, and I've studied this shit, like, both formally and informally for most of my life, and even I don't know. So like some random person on the internet who watched it once and immediately went to Facebook to a Facebook comment section, um, you know, that place where everybody goes to have their opinions heard. Um,
Oh,
Oh
ooh.
um,
God.
Oh, I just shuddered.
and so
Ah,
I
like
felt a chill run down my spine.
it's like that that to me is just like it's so just you don't know. I guarantee you don't fucking know that this is good writing. You just had a knee jerk reaction, said I didn't like this, and stopped thinking about it at that point. Like even me, like if I don't spend a ton of time thinking about it, and if I don't watch it again, I will still sort of process it in the background and like have new thoughts about it over time. But I couldn't tell you right off the bat all the time if something that I watched was good writing or bad writing, because there's been plenty of times where I like it's a lot of it is based on your perspective when you're watching. It's like this did not accomplish this, and then later you go back and you're like, oh wait, but it did accomplish this other thing, so maybe it's okay. You know, like you don't know.
Yeah. Oh
Anyway,
man, like Matt's calling out a very specific instance of something because Matt was one of the people that succumbed to my like read Gideon the Ninth, like read Tamsin Muir. You know, if you're friends with me, like you're gonna get the recommendation at some point. Um, but I remember I can't remember. I was trying to look something up, or I think I just got like fed a review for it, and it was somebody who I think very like either very clearly was trying to like bait clicks and get more people to like
sure.
read their article because they were mad, or just somebody who I think kind of fundamentally misunderstood what they were reading. Because certainly like Gideon the Ninth is something that is a little hard to pin down in terms of what genre it is. Like it's fantasy, but it's also sci-fi, and it's also a locked kind of a locked room mystery. It's those three things there. It's Knives Out if the characters were all like lesbian space necromancers. Um, and I remember reading this review of it where the person is like, "Yeah, no, like they didn't tell me anything. I didn't know how anything worked in the right on. They had all of this. It felt like they wrote a lot, and I didn't know what was happening. I was like, yes, you've just described how a mystery works. Thank you for sharing your revelation with the class. You're not supposed to understand everything. This is either a 3 or 4 book series. If this author is doing what they are supposed to, you're going to have questions until the fourth book comes out."
Yeah.
And it's one of those things also where as I had to read that book in chunks because I would have to set it down and digest like all of these characters with all of their
Mm-hmm.
motivations and
Mm-hmm.
all of this, and then now a new twist has been introduced and something else has happened, and so I have to put the book down and think about it for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, it is definitely like I think to some degree Matt is right. Matt says to me bad writing is not because you can predict what's happening or see the tropes being referenced. It's lazy, it's hacky, it's like porn. You know it when you see it. And I think that's true to an extent, but just to give you like a personal, very anecdotal, concrete example of this, there's a lot of stuff in like I truly hated the prequel trilogy, the Star Wars prequel trilogy. I still don't think they're great, but I have upon watching them recently looked back on some of that stuff and gone, okay, I kind of get what they were going for here. I don't think it worked, but I get what they were going for. And like for me, I don't consider that that doesn't mean just because it I can see what they were trying to do. It doesn't make it automatically good writing in my eyes, but it makes it I think, good story design, even if they didn't actually accomplish their goal. And I think that's the thing, right? We spend so much time talking about like, oh, it's good, it's bad, it's shitty, it's great, it's amazing, whatever, and we don't spend I think that enough time. I don't think any of that matters. I think that's all nonsense. It's all bullshit because I don't think any of that actually matters, because I think the things that do matter when you're talking about writing is you're talking about, did it work, you know? And I think that's where some of the distinction here, like that Matt is making, I think is where that comes in. Like, did this thing that they do, did it work? And I feel like sometimes what I see happening is people saying they're like, oh, the writing was bad because they don't like a particular character's skin tone, and it's just code for that. And basically, they're just like, I don't like that there are black people in my Star Wars, and but they can't say that because they know they'll get a bad reaction from it. So instead, they just say, oh, it's bad writing. Her character was written badly or whatever, and it's just like
Mhm.
it's code. And so I feel like so much of that happens, but it's so hard to get around it because we are so focused, even outside of those like coded criticisms. Um, we're so focused on good writing, bad writing, and that's not at all what we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on, what was this trying to accomplish, and did it do that?
Mhm.
And I think that's the only thing that really matters. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's one I don't necessarily agree with you on, Geek Outs, calling Rey a Mary Sue but not Luke. I think I don't actually agree with you there. Um, I've heard the arguments. I understand. I don't think I agree with you, especially having very recently rewatched um, the original trilogy. I think uh, Luke struggles. Luke has growth and has like these things where I don't feel like Rey ever
Mhm.
did. So, um, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We're not here to debate the sequel trilogy versus the original trilogy. Um,
Well, what I was gonna say
And,
too is
and the
like it.
fourth is just around the corner, so
yeah,
just
exactly.
hold on a little longer.
Right. No, no, that's the good point, Matt. I do see what you're saying. Yeah, and yeah.
I think a lot of it. I think a lot of it does come back to what we were talking about earlier in like kind of a consumerist approach to media, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hate this. It's bad writing. Kind of boils down like it extracts to like don't watch this, do watch this, buy this, don't buy this, right? Like I feel like it kind of just zooms out to that, and that's the level at which we engage. Is this good enough to watch, or is this not good enough to watch? As opposed to like, is this piece of media setting out like accomplishing the things that it set out to do? And that's a more nuanced conversation. That's much more difficult to have in 240
Yeah,
characters.
like, and I think,
Um,
and I do think, just to use the example of Ray and Luke to serve this conversation, I think there's an interesting point there to be said, which is like the question that I would ask with like the whole Ray thing is like, one, was I supposed to care about this character? And if the answer is yes, then the next question is, did I care about this character? And for me, the answer is not particularly. I didn't feel any sort of like emotional investment in this character. And then the next question is why?
mhm.
Why did I not care about this character?
Mhm.
And so like that's where I think those things sort of this is the discussion I think that we should be having, and it makes it way harder having though if these are the conversations that we're having, then I think it makes it way harder to hide like racism or homophobia or those kinds of things in like hide it in like criticism, because it's much harder when you're being specific um about what you did and didn't like, or about what you think did and didn't work, to pretend that when you say it was bad writing, you're not saying I didn't like that there were people of color in this. you know
Yeah, yeah.
it's yeah.
There's an interesting. I think there's a sociology paper or a psychology paper there also to be written about the way in
Absolutely.
which abstracting uh, media, like conversations and conversations of like media, anyway, abstracting conversations about media as a vessel
Mhm.
for not necessarily encouraging, but allowing people to more easily participate, like in bigotry, because it doesn't facilitate the same kind of like questioning
Yeah,
or introspection that a conversation with another human being might prompt, right?
exactly. And I do think that's kind of, it kind of brings us back around to what we were talking about, is that like my Allison, hello.
Hello.
No, like I do think it does give us like, it brings us back to that the earlier conversation we were having about like the sort of like mindful sort of engagement with like the like storytelling and narrative and that kind of stuff, as well as the way in which we engage with those things. And I think those are extremely related concepts, right? Like the way we talk about it leads to is directly related to how we engage with it, which directly engages or talks is involved and affects how we talk about it, and just like in just a circle. It really is that. And yeah.
I mean, this episode of Ramblemancy is illustrative of our point because the last like probably 45, 50 minutes of conversation have essentially stemmed from my correcting myself on a single word in a sentence. Um, and we were already kind of having a conversation about mindfulness and like feeding ourselves and separating from like the online like misery generation machine that is
Mhm.
social media. But yeah, like this is all kind of along that same thread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. And
I
yeah,
agree, Matt. They did kind of waste Gwendolyn Christie.
just put her in a helmet and then never show her face, and then also kill her off real fast after like her exactly 2 scenes and 5 lines of dialogue. Let's go.
Five?
Why
That's
why
pretty.
did you put her in here? Why did you, like, you could have had anybody do this.
Mm,
You didn't need
Could have
Gwendolyn
done.
Christie for this. Like, give
You could
her
have.
something cool to do.
yeah.
Yeah, if you're gonna put Gwendolyn
Uh,
Christie in your movie, please let Gwendolyn Christie do something cool.
Yeah.
Let them
um
go out in a blaze of glory, in on a kind
Kinda.
of in an exploding hangar on a superstar destroyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
did. This is totally unrelated, but I saw a fan. This is my favorite thing about Tumblr is this is the only place that you'll see this kind of shit.
Mhm.
Um, it was a fan comic of Samus Aran from Super Metroid and Phasma sitting on a couch together, like having a beer and chatting. And Phasma was asking something, and Samus responded. So like you're a bounty hunter and like you all of this. Why don't you speak like Galactic Common? She replies in sign language, raised by birds. Wrong mouth. Like
Yep.
there's this really cute comic of Samus trying to explain like I was raised by a bunch of creatures that are fundamentally incapable of speaking Galactic Common because they don't have that kind of mouth stuff going on. So I
Yeah.
learned to communicate with sign language.
Yeah.
Um, like you could have yeah. Anyway, that's a total aside, but Phasma coming up has reminded me of that joyous little experience that
Yeah.
I had this week.
And like, I don't get me wrong, I love Gwendolyn Christie, but like, I don't know. I don't feel like this is exactly what I mean about like the sequel trilogy. Like, I didn't feel emotionally invested in really any of those characters except for like obviously Finn and Poe, because like they were sort of set up to be kind of a like, oh my god, Gemini.
whoa. Okay.
Gemini, thank you so much for the 10,000 bits and also just your continued support, not only of us, like, of
Mm.
course, in this way, but also just cheerleading us and always believing in what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Gemini. It's very very good to see you always whenever you show up.
Mhm.
Um, but
And we are, in fact, working on some pretty cool stuff for later this year.
yes, we
So,
are. In fact, I just threw an update to some of the people involved today. So Um, but yeah, no, I just don't remember what I was talking about because Gemini just fully just derailed everything that was happening in my brain. So like in a good way, but like, whew, gone, nothing,
Oh yeah, nothing. Yeah, Gwendolyn
fully.
Christie,
Gwendolyn
hottie.
Christie.
That's all I got.
That's okay. Fair enough. Yes, that's um. No, Gemini, I totally get it. I understand. You pop in when you can, and yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
glad you're here. Right, Finn and Poe. I cared about them.
Right.
I wasn't super emotionally invested in anybody else in that show and or in those movies because like I didn't feel like enough work was done to make me care about them. Like I just wasn't emotionally invested. And honestly, after the first movie, I wasn't particularly invested in Finn either because of the way that the story treated him. Like I was just like, okay, he's just kind of doing some random stuff, I guess.
And
And yeah,
I think it's a good example of what happens when media exists only to like hit a certain number of marketable points, as opposed to existing to for the purpose of
right.
conveying an experience or a story,
And that's
right?
and that is a good point too. I do feel like often even when we are having the right conversations about media, I do feel like they are often built around a reality that doesn't exist. And that is a
Mm-hmm.
reality in which the point of producing this media is to make the best media possible, and in reality it's about filling pockets of very specific
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah,
Of course. Yeah.
And so like there
and
is that too, and I do think that that's certainly an important point within conversations about modern media, is to like keep that in mind. But I also think that it's that said, I also don't think that it takes away from the importance of having the conversation of wherein we try to hold our like the media to like a higher standard essentially of storytelling and writing and
because it can be done,
exactly.
right? It requires the right environment to
Mm-hmm.
happen, and I don't know enough about the production of particular like TV shows in particular,
Yeah.
um, and I know that there are so many hands involved in the process of creating one of your favorite shows, like literally hundreds, sometimes thousands of people who
Yeah.
who bring you a major motion picture or a
Oh
Mm-hmm.
God,
TV
I
series.
remember when we had Annabelle K on,
Hmm.
and she was talking
Yeah,
about
because
like
Anna.
yeah, she worked on in TV before what she's doing now, and like her insight into how that stuff worked was fascinating to me. Like that was a truly fascinating conversation.
Yeah, I was so very glad that we did get to talk to Anna about that and learn about that, because it did change the way that I see like film and TV.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Pretty fundamentally, just in terms of like, oh, like I bet that's why this happened, or at least having some like understanding of that, like that back end, I think changes the way that you look at or experience media too.
yeah, yeah.
Sort of, I think it's is it a Vonnegut thing? I think it was a Vonnegut thing. Like one of his letters where he was describing an anecdote. Somebody had written him a letter asking him about something about writing, and he described this story in which he was working at like a quarry for a summer,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the guys there like asked him, what he did, and he told him all of these things like this and that, like an instrument and writing and art, and like, oh wow, yeah, it's incredible that you're good at all of those things. It's like, oh no 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 no, no. I'm horrible at most of those, but I did them for the experience of doing them.
Mm-hmm.
And like every time you practice an art, no matter whether you are accomplished to whether or not you've put 10,000 hours to learn how to do it as best as can possibly be done, you've enriched yourself and probably the world in some way by doing that thing, and you've changed the way that you experience media.
Yeah,
Make art
Absolutely.
for no other reason than you want to.
yeah, yeah. Matt said, "I think knowing how the sausage is made makes me appreciate production even more. It did change how I consume media, but it makes me appreciate things that I would never have otherwise." And that's, yeah, I agree. Um,
Mm.
Human says, "I always warn people that watching things with me, I will ruin it. I just want to talk about the lighting, fortunately, but I will talk at length about how every scene is lit." Okay, to be honest with you, I took a lighting design course in college, and from that moment on, like even though I don't know a whole lot about like the actual like technical side of lighting and lighting design. No, sorry, not the technical side. The more like artistic side of it. I don't know how any of that stuff is done, but like I have become a lighting nerd. Like I really have. My own personal lighting in this space is not indicative of how much I think it I like it as a concept and appreciate good lighting. I'm simply limited by certain factors that I have very little control over in this space. But in general, yes, lighting is very cool, and I'm always fascinated by it. I was also
I am
fascinated to learn
yeah.
that. Sorry, one last thing, but like
Sorry, I
I was
didn't know.
fascinated to learn that like lighting design is everywhere in places you wouldn't even think about, like grocery stores, for example. A lighting
Mhm.
designer did the lighting in a grocery store. Like somebody designed that. It was an intentional choice. Anyway, I just think that that's cool and fascinating.
It
Sorry,
is.
Freeman, what were you saying?
Well, oh, I was just gonna say. I was just gonna talk about what was I gonna talk about? I was gonna mention. Um, I really love the behind the scenes of something. If I really love the show or movie enough, I will do one of two things. One, I will look up the behind the scenes, like the blooper reels, and two, I will look at behind the scenes, like how they made the sounds happen, like the blooper reels. Of course, I already said that, and and yeah, and all the mistakes that went into it, or all the like, just like all that little behind the scenes stuff. I really love that.
Yeah.
I think I'm like the Leonardo DiCaprio, that meme of him like standing up from the couch with a beer in his hand, pointing when it cut, just like, oh, that's what when an Aragorn. That's when Viggo Mortensen broke his toe. You
Yep.
know, so that's what
Also,
Lord.
one of my favorite like little anecdotes to share when I am watching Lord of the Rings with friends. I'm like, yeah, that's actually him just yelling in pain because he broke his toe.
or 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 my personal like lesser known one is like, okay, watch really close. What? Okay, see how Aramir's getting back up in his horse. Look! His sword fell out of his sheath. Uh,
Yep,
Oh my god, in the age before they can just fix that digitally in
yeah,
post, like
those are
yep,
gems.
absolutely. Oh, on the subject, I think equally as fascinating to me as lighting design is sound design. I think sound design is
Mm.
so cool. In particular, so a couple of things. One, I think I've mentioned before on this show that in my when I was in college, they had this series of events that would take place as sort of part of like the yearly catalog of events that were open not only to the students but also to the community around the college as well. And one of the events that I went to that I thoroughly enjoyed was basically like it was a graphic novel, sort of a like 1920s, 1940s ish um, sci-fi adventure graphic novel that basically they were projecting up onto this massive screen, and then they had a full cast of voice actors like reading the parts and the characters. But the thing that I was most fascinated by in that performance was a was their sound person. I forget what it's called. I know there's a proper name for it, but the person who's basically her entire job that whole night I was basically only watching her and seeing what different things she was using to create the sound effects. And god, that was so cool. It was so cool, like the different things that she was doing to like make sounds. Fully, yes. Thank you, Nearly Human. Um God, it was so cool. I was like mesmerized by her, like watching what she was doing. It was incredible. And the other thing this kind of goes to the behind the scenes stuff, right? The podcast audio drama, We're Alive, like zombies, survival, whatever. Um, Watching their behind the scenes and watching how they do their sound
Mm.
design is also extremely cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, that yeah, man, just I love that shit, and it's
Hmm.
just fascinating. But yeah,
Yeah, I know the two things from Lord of the Rings. Since I was talking about that, the sounds that I loved are like the goblins when they're skittering down from the ceiling,
mm-hmm,
and the Balrog.
yep,
I think that there was a combination of things, but of course they used sound equipment to like alter it to make it tweak it to what they needed. But like the base of the sound for the Balrog, I believe, was like a cinder block
yeah,
being
cinder
dragged
block,
on corrugated metal or something like that. Just like this
yeah,
deep grumbling, like rock against steel. But then they altered it to make the Balrog sound. I think that is
yeah.
really really cool. Um,
There was also
and the
like in
goblins are yeah.
no, go ahead. Sorry, finish what you're saying.
The goblin, I think the goblins are like a combination of like the same thing, but like they used bottle caps, I think, to make that skittering, the sound of
Yeah,
steel skittering down like from the
well,
ceiling.
and then
Yeah.
even in like in Return of the Jedi, for like the Rancor, like didn't they use like like one of the producers' dogs? I think was the sound for the Rancor.
That I think so. That
Yeah,
sounds really familiar.
yeah. I gotta just love this stuff. Sound and lighting nerds unite.
Hmm. Also, Chan said, "Oh man, there are some things that I just don't care about, but behind the scenes is so fascinating, like the bank vault robbery in Fast and Furious. I truly don't care about the whole franchise, but the fact that it was a stunt man driving a car that had a fake bank vault
It
built around
wait,
it, and
it
he had to
was.
act. Apparently, he had to act like a giant bank vault was being dragged by another car down the street. Wild respect."
I had no
Wow.
idea. That's fucking great. That's so
I have to
cool.
watch that again just so I can see that, like, be like, oh shit.
Oh yeah, no, I found out about punching or hitting actual meat for punches from Mythbusters,
Mm-hmm.
actually, from an episode of Mythbusters, or at least I don't know if it was actually Mythbusters. I feel like I can't remember if they actually had a show where it was just like the two guys talk about like stuff, or if it was just a part where they took a break from an episode to talk about their
Mm-hmm.
their work in film and TV.
Yeah.
But I remember them like literally getting like a haunch of pork and punching it.
Hmm.
Man. Man, my mind is still blown by that whole Fast and Furious thing. Cause like that is one of those movies that I have seen, and that whole time I swear to God I thought I was watching just CGI. That's incredible. Like that's so cool,
The
man.
guys on MythBusters built stuff for the second and third Matrix. So yeah, because that was like their whole job, like pre and I guess post MythBusters too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saw them
I
in
think
behind the
so.
scenes footage. That's kind of what like that would be a Leonardo DiCaprio pointing from the couch moment
Yeah.
for me too. Like holy
Well,
shit.
it's also interesting because like I'm also loving. Sorry, on this subject, I'm loving the return to like practical effects that we're getting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we as a society have left the era of everything CGI behind. Because like the thing that I always think about is that's like that thing where like on filming The Hobbit, Ian McKellen, like sorry, Sir Ian McKellen was like on like a sound stage surrounded by blue screen, and he wasn't even in the same room as like the other actors, and he just kind of like broke down and was like, "This is not why I got into acting," you know? Like
Hmm.
that's what that always gets me, and I think about that a
Hmm.
lot. But like I'm loving the return to practical effects. One because I think I like how cheesy and weird they look, and it's a lot harder to level criticism of like at like cheesy practical effects and like Jim Henson looking things, you know, puppets and shit, than it would be at like CGI, where it's like because like good CGI is like expensive and hard to like get right, especially on
Hmm.
like the budget and the like the timeline that they have to work with stuff. And so having those puppets, I feel like you're much if you're doing CGI, then you're much more likely to end up with kind of crappy CGI than with even on big budget productions than with, you know, things that look fully real. So I'm really loving the return to practical effects, but it also makes me think about using an example from the Lord of the Rings instead of the Hobbit, all the stuff that those people had to invent, literally invent, to make the Lord of the Rings work, like materials for their for the various like face sculptings and things like that, to like the actual props themselves and like design. It's just, oh god, just like inject it directly, like put it directly into my mouth. I just want to I love that stuff.
Yeah.
They like actually blew up a miniature of Helm's Deep's
Yeah.
wall to make the actual
We get
explosion too.
one
Which is,
take.
yeah,
We only
Well,
built
yeah,
one of
and
these, and
then
that's the only one we get.
like the whole like it starts raining while they're filming, and it's like we can't put 600 extras backing full makeup and prosthetics again. We don't have the budget for that. We don't have the
Yeah.
time for that.
Yeah.
We paid all these people to be here. We can't pay another like 200 people to replace the ones who aren't going to be able to make it next week, right? So like it just becomes part of the film now. Like it's just raining in Helm's Deep when the battle happens.
Yeah. No, it's, oh, man, it's just so good. Like thinking
Mhm.
about all the stuff that those people had to do in like Weta Workshop, and like to like make the Lord of the Rings happen. It always just blows my mind, and like as I've gotten older, every time I think about it, it just like fascinates me and amazes me just a little bit more, you know?
Yeah.
Cuz like I always thought it was cool even when I was a kid, but like now thinking about that stuff, I'm just like that's truly incredible because, and granted, they had a lot of stuff that like from like not they could work from concept art, but they could also work from like there were decades of like artwork done for the Lord of the Rings. So they had that stuff to work on, but a lot of stuff they just had to like. There are people whose literal job is to decide what Middle Earth is going to look like, and that's
Hmm.
fucking cool. Like
It really
Right?
is.
like that's just like they have to figure out not only what it's going to look like, but also how they're going to make the thing that makes it look like that. And that's like there's no roadmap for that. Like those are things that they kind of
Hmm.
just had to figure out themselves, and that's so cool. Anyway, yeah. Yep.
Anyway, this has been an
Now I gotta
extremely fun
watch
conversation.
another document. I gotta watch the documentary
There
for
you
Lord of
go.
the Rings
I'm gonna
again.
pop
It's
in those
10 hours
extended
long.
those special editions. Like pop in like the two bonus discs for
Yep.
for each one. Mm.
This also
Oh,
reminds me that I've been watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy with Bree for the first time, and we still have Return of the King to finish. So
Nice.
I'm gonna have to do that again soon.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh man. Well,
This
we're
has been a
sort of
very fun I was gonna say this has been a very fun conversation about art and media and caring for oneself.
yeah. Absolutely. This is good. This is why I love Ramblemancy so much.
Hmm.
me too.
But sorry. One second. The day has gotten to me.
It's
And
caught up.
it couldn't have happened at a better time because we are sort of at the end of our time here. We're a little bit early, but I feel like if we try to dive into another topic right now on the roll that we're on, we'll be here for another half an hour, 45 minutes or whatever. And I need to
I
go
need
and turn my brain off.
I need to eat.
Coming back full circle to that to the beginning of the topic, how do you care for yourself
How-
and nourish yourself offline?
Chicken nuggets,
Step
probably.
1, get offline.
Yeah, I love that. Let's get out of here, boys.
All right, y'all.
Very fun if we just push the end screen button right now.
Step one,
Yeah, I was
and
like, oops. Oh.
No.
all right, y'all. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us tonight, everybody. We appreciate your insights and your presence. Um, we will be back next week for more Ramblemancy. I don't think we have another video game stream scheduled for this coming week. But stay tuned. That could change. We don't know. But yeah, so stay tuned as we give you bring you some announcements as to what's coming this week as far as next week's Ramblemancy. Stay tuned. Um, as always, if you'd like to support us, you can do what Gemini did and drop a whole bunch of bits, just a truly ridiculous number of bits here. But you don't have to use Gemini as your standard. You could whatever you want. You can also support us on Patreon, of course. You all know the drill. There's lots of good stuff on Patreon. You know what you'll find there. If you are subscribed to us here on Twitch and you are also in our Discord, you get a lot of the Patreon rewards as well as the back catalog of everything we've got, everything we've done since the beginning of time. I mean the Patreon. So
Feels like the beginning of time.
a little bit. So yeah, we also have a coffee, which we haven't really been using or plugging much lately, but we do have it. If that makes you feel more comfortable, that's also a great way to support us here. But more than anything, if you are watching us here on Twitch, we appreciate you. We appreciate you chatting. We appreciate you lurking and hanging out. If you are watching this on YouTube, liking, commenting, and subscribing is very helpful. And just generally appreciated. We like seeing what you guys have to say. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you would like to keep the conversation going, there's a Discord for that, and you can go right on over there, literally right now. You don't even have to wait for us. You can just go. Yeah.
And the same comments and likes and subs. Subscribe on YouTube as well. Yes.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We're gonna go. We will see you next week for some more Ramblemancy, but if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone, everybody.